Okay. Let me first welcome everyone today to the 32nd annual meeting of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. I want to thank Ken Jones, our Global Network member and great activist from Asheville, North Carolina, who is doing all the tech work today to make this show possible. We appreciate that very much. And we will be moving on. We have a series of speakers, 10 minutes each. So again, if you're just coming on, please in the chat, put where you're coming from. You can already see we have people from all over the world today. I'm very happy about that. And well, let's get started. Our first speaker today is the board convener, the chair of the Global Network, Dr. Dave Webb, who also runs our website in addition to being the chair of the Global Network. He lives in Leeds, England, former, former professor of engineering and later in his career of peace studies. So Dave is going to start out first with a presentation, and welcome, Dave.
Thank you. I hope you can see this. I've got too many slides, so I'll go quite quickly through some of them. It's great to see everyone. It's really good to be together with you today. So I'm just going to talk about spaceports and the militarization of space in the UK. Basically, a lot of things are happening here, and the previous government says that the UK space sector is growing faster than the rest of the UK economy, and it's worth over £17.5 billion per year and employs nearly 49,000 people, while satellites underpin £360 billion per year of wider economic activity. So the UK is taking space very seriously and has developed a widespread infrastructure to support it. Since the 1940s, Britain has hosted a number of US communications and intelligence gathering facilities at air bases around the UK. And in the last few years, many of these have acquired space applications. The UK has become enthusiastic partners with the US in their efforts to extend their military reach into space. The annual MOD Ministry of Defence report for 2021 stated that space is fundamental to military operations and underpins our ability to undertake the majority of defence tasks. And the MOD's, the Ministry of Defence's 2022 defence strategy described how defence will protect the UK's national interest in space in an era of ever-growing threats. We don't expect this current new government to be any different from the last one. The UK's military space programme is managed by UK Space Command, which was established in April 2021 and works with both civilian and commercial partners through a commercial integration cell, and also with international partners to spread the cost. A few months ago, the UK Space Agency announced a £20 million international bilateral fund to foster links with the US, Canada, Australia, Japan, India, Singapore, South Africa, and others to advance space research technology. Of course, the UK and US space commands work very closely together, and an enhanced memorandum of understanding has been signed to deepen military cooperation in space. Just a few days ago, on July the 17th, the RAF and USAF signed a shared vision statement that drags the UK even further into US plans. There are three critical lines of effort which have been highlighted: operational harmonization, capability integration, and system resilience. In a news release, the head of US Space Operations, General Saltzman, is quoted as saying, "Among great powers, space is the linchpin. Collaboration between the US and UK is essential to maintaining our combined forces' competitive advantage across all domains." These are the Delta units of US Space Force. The UK is directly involved in some of these, as we shall see. Recognizing the security and environmental problems inherent in this space activity, a few days ago, really, there was the first meeting of Space Watch UK to bring together local protest groups where spaceports and other activities are taking place. Spacewatch was originated from Drone Wars UK, and the people there recognized the importance of space in drone warfare and elsewhere. If we can have a look at, first of all, at Scotland, where most of the spaceports, planned spaceports, are situated. If we go through these, one on the Shetland Islands here, called Saxiford, was established by Lockheed Martin, which gives an indication of where that might be going. And that will consist of an array of 1.5 to 3.7 meter antennas supporting satellite operations in the low Earth polar orbit. Then there's Spaceport Sutherland, which claims to be the world's first carbon neutral spaceport, if ever such a thing could exist, and green rocket fuels, ditto. Spaceport Machrihanish, here is on the island of North Uist, is a former top secret airbase and once an emergency landing site for space shuttles. And Glasgow Prestwick is an airport for horizontal launches, that is, launches from aircraft that take off horizontally from long runways. So North Coast Space Cluster is another area. Does that come up? No. North and Space Scotland. These are kind of supported hubs which bring together commerce, industry, academia, and anyone else interested in projecting the space systems. You can see that these are mainly in remote areas, these places. Here's an example of some of them where the beautiful scenery, which are rich in wildlife and rare species of plants and insects, all of these are at risk from the establishment of these spaceports. There's been a lot of protest from local residents and beyond, and it continues, but it is mostly ignored, and the landscape is devastated by construction and wildlife disturbed and maybe frightened off, or worse, by future launches. There are the different impressions, and here in this light, you'll see the different impressions of Prestwick Spaceport, how it might develop. This was the first kind of thing to sell to local population. It looks amazingly high tech and wonderful. Then it got down to this, and then eventually it was this. So over time, they became less ambitious, more practical, and more military. Onto England and Wales, and here about 60 miles from where I live is Fylingdales, which is a pyramid-shaped phased array radar, which contributes to US missile defense and also tracks satellites and contributes to Space Force's Delta II and Delta IV units. Closer still to me is a place called Menwith Hill, which is a huge US spy base run by the NSA that also is partly involved in downloading space from space components of missile defense. Then we have Croughton down in Northamptonshire, which is a focal point for the US military communication systems within Europe and includes 2 high security SIGINT areas, that is signals intelligent areas, and has a direct fiber optic communications link with Camp Lemonnier in the US military base in Djibouti, which the US carries out drone strikes on Yemen and Somalia. Croughton has also got a transmitter annex nearby at Barford St John. Then we have GCHQ Cheltenham. This is the centre for activities such as the NSA. GCHQ is the equivalent to the British equivalent to the NSA. That's so those a lot of the intelligence bases are connected to that. Then we have GCHQ Bude in Cornwall, which is a composite signals organization station. It's a satellite ground station and an eavesdropping center. An undersea cable linking the UK to the US surfaces just 16 miles south of the site and is basically hacked into by this particular base. And so they're listening to all the communications that come through the fiber optic cable. And also there's a satellite receiving, commercial satellite receiving system at Goonhilly Downs, which it's also logged into. Then we have Molesworth in Cambridgeshire, which used to host cruise missiles. It's now the home of the Joint Intelligence Operations Centre and the Europe Analytics Centre, and serves as a focal point of military intelligence for the US European Command. And close by is a support base at Alconbury. And also fairly close by is RAF Digby, which is a base for a program called, or nicknamed, Air Handler, which uses surveillance equipment on Predator and Reaper drones to gather data that's passed on to military communication commanders. I think I'm probably running out of time. Waddington here runs Protector drones from the UK. Then we have Feltwell, which used to be part of the 5th Space Surveillance Squadron, US Air Force 5th Surveillance Squadron. It now hosts the US Space Force's 73rd Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance Squadron. Similarly, well, not similarly, but we have a place in Brawdy in Wales now, which is destined to be, unless we can stop it, will be part of the DARC system, the Deep Space Advanced Radar capability, which does 2 other particular bases, one in Australia, one in the United States. And that will be an enhancement to Space Delta II operations, space surveillance for the US.
They're worried about the
Then Spaceport Cornwall in Newquay is something you may have heard of. It was the first spaceport to get a license in the UK, and in January 2023 it tried to do one of these horizontal launches, or Virgin company tried to do that, Virgin Orbit, lifted off with a satellite placement rocket underneath. It fired the rocket fired, but on the second stage it suffered what they called an anomaly and actually failed. It was actually carrying 9 small satellite systems, 4 of which were for the US-UK military, although that never came up very much in the news. As a result of this, Virgin Orbit actually went bust. It lost a lot of money on that. We also now have the US Space Command at High Wycombe, where all of these different things report to, and also RAF Blenheim Crescent, which contains branch offices of the European Office of Aerospace Research, and it's dedicated to the development and integration of direct energy-based aerospace warfighting technologies. So there's a lot of stuff going on. We also have a place now in Harwell in Oxfordshire, which has regional offices also in Scotland and Edinburgh. This is the offices of the UK Space Agency. So just to show that
Dave, your time is up.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I've more or less finished.
All right.
I'll get back to stop share.
You want to make a final comment?
Yeah, sorry, that's just a few of the kind of the space systems that are being developed and developed further by the UK to take part in commercial space activity, but also in military space activity. And as this whole kind of scene grows, we can expect to see more spaceports being bid for and more military activity in conjunction with the United States. So things are not looking very good in the UK. I guess we'll just carry on unless we can prevent this. And this is the idea of Space Watch, to put up the opposition, to coordinate the opposition to these things that are growing, and try and at least get the public to know what's actually going on, because a lot of the general public just see it as a glorified, wonderful science contribution rather than something to be really worried about from the militaristic point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much.
Korrekt.
Would everybody please mute? We're hearing someone's talking, so please, everyone, please mute so that, okay. Next, I want to welcome another one of our board members in the Global Network, Koohan Paik-Mander from Hawaii. She's a activist, a writer, and will make a presentation now. Welcome, Koohan.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you everyone for being here. I have a new policy now of not showing my image that if it's going to be posted online because of the current developments in AI. Of course, this is directly connected to the proliferation of the space industry and satellites going up everywhere, because surveillance can't happen without that. And of course, surveillance can't happen if we remain as undigitized as we can. My voice will be heard, however, and I ask you I'll share my screen so that at least you can see my picture. So, hold on. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
I ask you all to lift your gaze from your devices and look around and be in your embodied environment, in your embodied self, because as long as we are in this existence, that's how we will prevail over the digitalization of missile technology. So I shall begin. Just listen to my voice, and perhaps it'll have a different impact to not be present in your device. The real purpose of so-called missile defense has never been defense. On the off chance that you might have thought otherwise, the real purpose has always been to shift money from the people directly into the coffers of the weapons manufacturers. So I'd like to start with a trip down memory lane to the days of the Reagan administration. That's when the first gigantic infusion of funding into missile defense took place. At the time, people thought the idea of intercepting missiles would never be possible. They used to say mockingly, it's like trying to hit a bullet shooting through the sky with another bullet. Missile defense was hugely controversial because so much money was being spent on something that was considered a fantasy, which is why they used to call it the Star Wars project, you might remember, after the science fiction movie. Not long after the Berlin Wall came down. As a result, funding for war in space dropped precipitously. I mean, after all, if the communists and the capitalists were now friends, there was no longer a purpose for a Cold War or an arms race. It was an obsolete notion. But then, as the 21st century emerged, weapons companies became nostalgic for the scandalously large profits of the Cold War days. They wanted their arms race back. They wanted another Cold War again. So with China's economy gaining by leaps and bounds, it only made sense to the profiteers to focus on China as the next big threat. In 2011, Obama announced the so-called Pacific Pivot, which was comprised of a transfer of over half the Pentagon's total assets and resources from Europe and the Middle East to Asia and the Pacific. We were told that Europe and the Middle East were stable, compared to a conflict between the US and China that would soon be brewing over control of the world's last remaining resources. War with China was the perfect excuse to infuse money again into missile defense research, as well as construction of missile deployment facilities all over the Asia-Pacific region, as well as selling loads of weapons. Obama's Defense Secretary Ashton Carter made a couple of barnstorming tours to most all the Asian countries, peddling fighter jets and amphibious tanks, drones, destroyers, nuclear subs, missiles, torpedoes, and more, like a traveling salesman. while fear-mongering that their neighbor China would subsume them all if they didn't side with the US and its so-called rules-based order and freedom of the seas. As a result, hundreds of massively destructive ecocidal war practice exercises now take place throughout the Pacific annually. Hundreds. The largest and most bombastic being RIMPAC in Hawaii, where 29 nations from all over the world and over 25,000 troops convene for 5 weeks to recreate war with 40 surface ships, 3 submarines, 14 national land forces, and over 150 aircraft. That's going on right now in our waters and on my island. Other massive war convenings include Talisman Sabre in Australia, Cope North in the Marianas, and Balikatan in the Philippines. These terribly ecocidal, full-scale mock battles in our once serene oceans are fairly new, initiated by the Obama administration. Just to give you an idea of how ecocidal these war exercises are, between the years 2018 to 2025, the US government granted the Navy exemption from the Marine Mammal Protection Act, allowing them to kill over 10 million marine mammals. Over 10 million. It's a Holocaust. By the time Biden was elected into office, one of the first moves the new administration made was to pull out of Afghanistan. This would allow them to focus solely on China, or so they thought, as Russia had not yet invaded Ukraine. China is a nation so enormous, so powerful, and so distant that it ostensibly justified to Congress footing the bill for the kinds of high-ticket, high-tech weapons required for the task. We're talking missiles, drones, AI, robotics, and the infrastructure that goes with all that. For the weapons companies, it would make the profits turned from fighting in Afghanistan look like peanuts with their old school tanks and choppers. So the US ditched the Middle East for more lucrative war making, leaving Afghanistan tragically in shambles after 20 years of violence, thousands of lives lost, and over $2 trillion squandered. Meanwhile, the interception rate of missile defense had improved dramatically. We saw evidence of this progress last April, which is what gave me the idea for this talk. You might remember Iran shot hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel. 99% of them were successfully intercepted by both US and Israeli defense systems, with names like Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 2, and Arrow 3. It was ostensibly a testament to the superior technology of lead manufacturer Raytheon. Of course, we all remember Raytheon's the company where Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, or as our President Biden calls him, that black guy, sat on the board before his current appointment. Amazing success at intercepting Iran's attacks, or so the story goes. I contend that focusing on the very narrow, very reductive metric of interception success is actually a distraction from, well, it even gets in the way of defense of the nation from attack. What focusing on interception success is actually very good at doing is providing an arbitrary metric to be able to hold up to Congress as disingenuous proof that this missile defense is so effective that it deserves more funding. The military planners have been so focused on interception, of the miracle that they've mastered of shooting down a speeding bullet with another bullet, that everyone's lost sight of their goal, which is actually to defend the nation. As a result, they don't see that Iran's attack on Israel was actually a tactical victory for the Iranians. Iran had made the calculated decision to favor quantity of strikes over accurate aim. Every cheaply made drone of those hundreds of drones and missiles that entered Israeli airspace, no matter how poorly aimed, required that the US and Israel burn a few $1 million per intercepting missile worth of AI, missiles, and hardware to intercept it. The idea for Iran was to cast as many projectiles at Israel as possible, not to necessarily penetrate its elaborate defense system, but rather to deplete the arsenal and consequently topple Goliath by his own weight. And at that, they succeeded brilliantly. Depleting the enemy's munitions at a 1 to 12 cost ratio was a tactical victory. Israel and the US had spent well over $1 billion in a matter of hours that night. The blogger Indrajit Samarajiva wrote an analysis which is too colorful for me to not repeat. And he said, "It was literally good money after bad. It's like smashing a roach with a Rolex. Israeli missile defense is the definition of Pyrrhic victory. They're lighting their own money on fire and crowing about how bright it is." End quote. At first, this plot twist made me chuckle. Then I remembered something quite chilling that University of Hawaii professor Jairus Grove once told me. He said that the rush to replace human soldiers with unmanned drones and robots was motivated by the goal of normalizing endless war and its continual profits. As long as there were no American casualties, there'd be no public pressure to end wars. And of course, endless war means endless profits for Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, and the whole band of sleazy thugs. Case in point, within less than 1 week after Iran's attack, a US military aid package of $100 billion was sent to replenish Israel's arsenal, as well as that of Ukraine, where the same depletion is taking place, and Taiwan. Less than a month after that, another $1 billion was sent to Israel alone, and lo and behold, they are normalizing the conveyor belt of cash from American pockets directly into the coffers of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, SpaceX, and all the rest. No, this is not a one-off. This is a formula. This will happen again. America's geopolitical adversaries around the world have taken note. They've learned that they don't need to shoot a hypersonic missile at the White House and hit it to win. All they need to do is volley a barrage of cheap projectiles into the dome of protection and watch billions of dollars go up in smoke. What had been thought of as an unassailable protection by missile defense turns out to actually be a giant neon sign that says, "Kick me." It's an invitation to America's enemies to attack, not necessarily to strike, but simply to further deplete the wealth of our nation, impoverish our citizens, collapse our healthcare and education systems, and leave neglected our crumbling infrastructure, just by sending some cheap-ass drones over to be intercepted by Rolls-Royces. And the weapons manufacturers are complicit. They get even richer, replacing the munitions which had been depleted. Stock prices go up, and Congress loves it too, since so many of its members are shareholders in the war industry. It enriches the ruling class of a nation, the same nation that it simultaneously defeats. These people should be tried for treason. The point is endless war for endless profit. As Julian Assange observed years ago about the war in Afghanistan, the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan, and back through the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e., the goal is to have endless war, not successful war, end quote. Likewise, the goal is to use missile defense to wash money out of the pockets of hardworking Americans and citizens wherever the space industry is cropping up into the hands of the architects of war. The profound tragedy, of course, is that the price that is paid is even greater than the full spectrum collapse of the US and other countries. The price is endless genocide. we've constructed, and we are in the midst of constructing, an ever-expanding genocide economy. The official death count in Palestine right now is 186,000 with no end in sight. Trump and Vance are pro-Israel, just like Biden and RFK Jr. Meanwhile, the US continues to suffer from skyrocketing youth suicides, normalized mass shootings, widespread homelessness, an epidemic of opioid addiction, rampant crime, and a declining life expectancy. And you've got to have all that normalized, all that, if you're going to normalize endless war as well.
Koohan, time is up. Please wrap.
Okay, so just to wrap it up, the defense budget is now, as a result, over $1 trillion a year, or it's up to $1 trillion. We need to bring back our money. We need to bring it home. And missile defense may be the biggest, longest running, most morally bankrupt public scam in human history. Thank you, and sorry for going over.
All right. Good job, Koohan. Thank you. Just to add to that, this morning I got an email from the Sputnik, the Russian media outlet, saying that the United States was getting ready to deploy ground-based satellite jammers to disable Russian and Chinese satellites. So clearly they're developing these technologies in order to be able to successfully, quote unquote, run a first strike attack on those two countries. So things are really, really looking bad right now. Next up, we were scheduled to have board member Aruna Kamila, professor of law from India, speak, but she messaged me 2 days ago saying that she had a family emergency. She thought she was going to be able to still come, but she couldn't. So also board member Lisa Savage has agreed to come in and fill in for Aruna on the topic of Israel and Palestine. So we want to go to Lisa. Lisa is a retired teacher, was a candidate for the United States Senate in Maine, where we live. She is now also the part-time social media coordinator for the Global Network. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks everyone for being here. What a great gathering of people. I had very short notice to prepare this presentation, so please bear with me if I have some glitches along the way. I'm going to start by sharing a video that is from Instagram that someone has recorded of a Palestinian child. And I think that it's kind of a great exhibit for why technology has been a game changer in this particular phase of the Nakba, or the Holocaust against Palestinians. So hopefully this is going to work for us. Here we go.
حفايتي 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 متشابهان الشمس والقمر كوكبان وفلسطين والأردن أخوان وسوريا والعراق توأمان وإسرائيل وحفايتي.
So you get the idea. I'm going to now share my screen with my slides. So hold on a second, please. So technology has really been a game changer, because this has been the first conflict. Maybe Ukraine could be said to be the first, but this is certainly the first in the Middle East where people directly have been able to be sort of first-person witnesses to their own experiences and the type of things that we see coming out of Gaza during since last October have really changed people's attitudes, the public's attitudes quite a bit. Just as it could take days to go through all the really, really horrifying things that the Zionist regime has done. I think statistically, the fact that they kill a child in Gaza every 10 minutes has made a lot of difference in how this has been perceived. And of course, the fact that the United States, at least, has really made a concerted effort to ban TikTok is directly related to the sharing of things like the Israeli military attacking a disabled person with a dog and just allowing them to bleed out while their family cries in the other room. It's just one of the latest atrocity of many. And oddly, the Israeli entities, soldiers love sharing evidence of their atrocities online, which is kind of strikes many of us as strange, but that is how it has been used quite a bit during this conflict. Israel's now dropped more bombs on Gaza than were used in Dresden, Hamburg, and London combined. In other words, those countries being bombed during World War II, and it keeps designating safe zones and then deliberately bombing or shooting at people in those safe zones. Some of the statistics are that it will take 15 years to clear the rubble from Gaza and maybe as much as 80 years to rebuild. And just yesterday, I read an interview with a reservist, an Israeli soldier, who said, well, the Caterpillar bulldozers come in and just clear all the corpses and kind of bulldoze them off to the road so that the other forces coming in don't see it or journalists don't see it, and just kind of buries them in the rubble. Israel, of course, is losing the war and has been losing. The hostage battle is kind of a civil war in Israel because the families of the hostages naturally want them to be rescued, and the government seems to not care at all. The Hannibal Directive, in other words, kill Israelis, kill your own side so that they can't be taken prisoner or taken as hostages, has been in full operation and very visible during this. And but the economy of Israel is in bad shape. Even Elbit Systems, the biggest weapons manufacturer they have, which operates in many countries, earnings are down. There's been a lot of resistance against Elbit. I'll talk about that toward the end. And I think there's been a lot of false focus on Netanyahu as the problem, because it gives people something to think about that's changeable, such as get Netanyahu out of being prime minister. But most people realize that would change very little. The other thing that significant yesterday, I believe it was, or maybe day before yesterday, the International Court of Justice found Israel guilty of apartheid against the Palestinians. And that ruling is legally significant, even if Israel rejects it and immediately says we don't recognize the jurisdiction of that court to say any such thing. Another big game changer is that the Supreme Court of Israel recently said the ultra-Orthodox no longer get an exemption from being conscripted into the military. And that has resulted in huge rioting and resistance and outbreaks, not only in Israel, but in the US and I think in London as well. Information management is always key. And in our new digital world, a lie can travel around the world 1,000 times before the truth has gotten its shoes on. The tactic of announcing a big lie immediately and then only way later on maybe walking it back a little, but the original lie gets spread and spread and spread. And part of information management is also distracting people. The whole presidential election in the US, the whole should Netanyahu still be prime minister in Israel, these are keep the public distracted and focused on these personalities that they love to hate. The whole drama of Biden's dementia does he conduct our support, the US support for the war in Israel, does he possibly have the mental acuity to do that? Or, are there people behind the scenes doing that? Again, the Trump assassination attempt, Joe Laurie of Consortium News said, this time there were multiple Zapruder films. So that is, part of what's different about our day. Of course, the US empowers Israel via space technology. Pine Gap in Australia is key spying center, and Pine Gap employees have said that there are Iron Dome is sorry, I was distracted. Somebody needs to mute. An employee of Pine Gap has said, yes, we are monitoring Gaza and Palestine and the surrounding countries constantly. We are feeding that information to Israel for them to do what they need to do. So here's a good example in Australia of some resistance to that. People know what's going on at Pine Gap and that it's enabling this genocide through satellite technology. Koohan gave us a great analysis of Iron Dome, so I'm not going to talk about that. But we also know that the Starlink satellite network of Elon Musk's, also Israel licensed it to operate in that country back in February, and they are undoubtedly using that for military communication purposes. The resistance is also, of course, using technology quite a bit. Just yesterday, I saw a video on Telegram from the Resistance News Network. I don't understand Arabic. It had a soundtrack of a song in Arabic, but what it was basically doing was showing all the resistance militias. So Hamas, Hezbollah, Ansar Allah, and several others, the resistance in Iraq, and showing that they are all united in their purpose of resisting Israel's control and killing of so many in Palestine. And, Israel's been bombing Syria, it's been bombing Lebanon. Another significant occurrence this week was that Ansar Allah in Yemen actually sent a missile that hit Tel Aviv quite close to the US Embassy. And it's this is a concrete example of how Iron Dome isn't really protecting in the way that it used to, or that it has been promised to protect. Way back toward the beginning of the current phase, and that is my timer. I am out of time, so let me turn that off and just quickly say a US base in Jordan was hit, and 3 Black soldiers were killed there because it was a forward spy station that operates in Jordan. There's lots of resistance. Here in Maine, we've been shutting down General Dynamics any chance we get. Recently, several of us from the Global Network attended the NATO summit, the People's Summit in Washington, D.C., and a huge group of mostly younger people, many of them part of national liberation efforts in their own country, Philippines, South Korea, various European countries, had come together in Washington, D.C. Very interesting, very, very good speakers, a lot of information. And I'm just going to end with remembering Aaron Bushnell. Aaron Bushnell knew that the U.S. Air Force was complicit in the genocide of Gaza, that he personally was, and made the decision to burn himself to death in front of the Israeli embassy in the U.S. Many, many airmen and women have since gone AWOL, declared applied for conscientious objector status and other forms of resistance because the Air Force particularly feels complicit. And so thanks for listening, and thanks for being here. Stop sharing now.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for filling in at the last minute. Good job. Next, we want to take a little break with a song called Elon's Gone to Mars. It's done by our dear friend and longtime Global Network member and supporter, Tom Nielsen from Western Massachusetts. Dave Webb, our chair of the Global Network, he took the song and kind of illustrated it in a wonderful way. So we're going to play that now.
Elon wants to take control of the universe. Elon Musk is gone to Mars. Get some lithium for cars. Just another cake to bake. Back to lunch that he could take. Elon wants to take control of the universal whole. Want some better candy bars, so Elon's gone to Mars. The Mars Society says there's profitability from gold and maybe oil if there's dinosaurs in their soil. They say the rotten earth is dying and Mars is good for trying. Take along his bong cigars, Elon's gone to Mars. Detonate 10,000 nuclear bombs on 1,000 starships with no qualms. Terraform with CO2, turn the red planet green and blue. Drill and spill like Kalamazoo with his SpaceX ingenue.
Elon, off he's gone to drop the bomb.
Elon says he'll do a coup anywhere he wants to do. Like he did in Bolivia, now he's extraplanetary. Intergalactic operations for colonial corporations. I know it's a bit bizarre, but Elon's gone to Mars. Detonate 10,000 nuclear bombs on 1,000 starships with no qualms. Not to worry about radiation when there's billionairization. Just wants to heat up outer space so he can go and own the place. Elon wants to own a place, own his place in outer space. Packing now to catch his flight, taking the red eye overnight. Jeff Bezos going to for a low-wage rendezvous, planning military bases for those Martian marketplaces, playing sci-fi in the stars. Elon's gone to Mars. What planet is Elon on? He's already there before he's gone. 6 extinctions are addressed, leaving Earthlings in distress. Planet is sending an SOS. He could have helped clean up the mess. Planning billionaire bazaars, Elon's gone to Mars. Maybe you can come along. What could possibly go wrong? Playing sci-fi in the stars, Elon's gone to Mars.
Isn't that great? If we were all together, we would applaud right now. Wonderful song. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ken Jones, for posting it up there for us, and Dave for illustrating it in such a wonderful, wonderful way. Next up, kind of on the same subject, if you will, is our dear friend, Carl Grossman, professor of journalism at the College of Old Westbury on Long Island in New York. Carl was one of the original founders, co-founders of the Global Network when we created it in 1992. Carl's going to talk about mining the sky. So Carl, I believe you're ready. Just come on board, please. You're probably muted, Carl, so make sure you unmute.
Hey, okay, that should unmute me, right? Okay. The handbook for the scheme to mine the sky is this book. Mining the Sky, and catch the subtitle, Untold Riches from the Asteroids, Comets, and Planets by John Lewis. On the book jacket, back of the book, Hans Mark is a former NASA deputy administrator, declares that Lewis has given us a glimpse of the future as it will be. Under Mark's words, those of Gordon Pettigill, a professor at the Center for Space Research at MIT, Lewis forces us to accept the outrageously improbable as a logical part of our future. Lewis concludes Mining the Sky. His last chapter, it's titled Civilization in Space. He says, scientifically, technical improvements in launch vehicles will make departure from Earth easy and inexpensive. Once we have a foothold in space, the mass of the asteroid belt will be at our disposal, permitting us to provide for the material needs of 1 million times as many people as Earth can hold. Other books include Mining the Sky. In addition to Mining the Sky, When the Heavens Went on Sale by Ashley Vance. It was published just last year. His earlier books include Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. Then there's Space Enterprise by David Ditzler, which was published this year. It follows his 2020 book, Mining the Moon, in which he envisions hope for a long-lasting future for the human race and no more end-of-the-world scenarios. The development of a trade between the moon, Mars, asteroids, space colonies, settlements on other worlds, and subsequently a larger economy that offers new business opportunities and a chance for entrepreneurs to tap new markets. There's also Space Mining and Manufacturing, Off-World Resources and Revolutionary Engineering Techniques by, he's from the United Kingdom, David Sivola. He's an aerospace engineer, and he writes about in exceeding the capability of the environment on Earth to absorb what we throw at it, we face long-term pollution. We have now created the conditions for climate change, endangering the animal species and loss of human lives. But he says, there's no danger of environmental pollution in space since there's no biosphere. Among numerous articles on Mining the Sky was a piece in 2020, Asteroid Mining Could Solve Rare Metal Shortage, with a subhead, some near-Earth asteroids could be worth billions. Now we just have to get there and back safely and cost-effectively. But an article, and here's some questions begin to arise, fortunately. Bloomberg Business Week had a piece, Asteroid Gold Cast Doubt on Mining the Sky. Its subhead, Despite Entrepreneurs' Hopes, the technical challenges and huge costs mean no one will be retrieving ore from the heavens anytime soon. The piece said there's a widespread skepticism that space mining can move beyond science fiction, beyond the foreseeable future. The outlay for extracting galactic resources remains astronomical. Prices of metals such as platinum or palladium would need to skyrocket for the ventures to pay off, and there's little to indicate that asteroid miners could extract enough metal to supplant Earth-based mining in any meaningful way. Still, the skepticism hasn't dissuaded many space executives who point to rapid advancements in technologies and innovations from companies such as Elon Musk's Space Exploration Technology Corp as evidence of what's possible. Then there's the military and nuclear power links. A 1997 report by the U.S. Space Command titled Vision for 2020 speaks about historically military forces have evolved to protect national interests and investments. And they talk about space forces emerging to protect military, commercial, national interest and investment in the space medium due to their increasing importance. And then there's the nuclear connection, an extensive paper about this, 2013, nuclear power and associated environmental issues. And this is its title, in the transition of exploration and mining off-world natural resources in the 21st century. Six authors, scientists and engineers from various corporations. It states that forward-looking analysis of our situation on Earth reveals that space exploration will one day provide natural resources that will provide for the dwindling resources on Earth and offset their prices on Earth. Mining is anticipated on the moon for increasingly valuable commodities. It goes on, and then says nuclear power will provide the means necessary to realize these goals. Nuclear systems will enable humankind to expand beyond the boundaries of Earth, renew critical natural resources, and so forth. How realistic is mining the sky? Sarah Novak wrote an article last year in Discover magazine titled Road Trip to the Red Planet, in which she spoke about what it would be like to stay or live on Mars. In it, she said Mars is an arid, inhospitable desert with temperatures reaching minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit regularly. What's more, the red planet would not be habitable without spacesuits and a completely enclosed environment, because the planet's air is about 95% carbon dioxide. And she continued, colonists on Mars would face other challenges too. For starters, it'd be difficult to grow food on Mars. Its soil contains poisonous compounds of chlorine. All the elements we take for granted on Earth would not exist on Mars. Or consider last year's book, City on Mars. Can we settle space? Should we settle space? And have we really thought this through? That's title and subtitle. In it, Kelly and Zach Weinersmith write, the truth is that settling other worlds in the sense of creating self-sustaining societies somewhere away from Earth is not only unlikely anytime soon, it won't deliver on the benefits touted by the advocates. No vast riches, no new independent nations, no second home for humanity, not even a safety bunker for ultra elites. Yet we find ourselves in a world where space agencies, huge corporations, and media-savvy billionaires are promising something else. According to them, settlements are coming perhaps as soon as 2050 or so. They close the book by saying, having devoted this time to trying to see a more realistic vision of space settlement, one of the few things we can say with certainty is that we have more appreciation of our home and the people inside it. The Earth isn't perfect, but as planets go, it's a pretty good one. We aren't saying we should give up on this hope for a life off-world. What we are saying is that if you do want that dream, you have to see the challenges as they are, real and profound. My conclusion, we reside on an exquisite blue marble in space that sustains life. And we so need to be stewards, caring for the Earth, not indulging in dangerous, ultra expensive schemes of getting rich by mining the heavens and dubious fantasies of escaping from the Earth. That's my 10 minutes.
You are right on the money, as they say on Wall Street there, Carl Grossman. Thank you very much. We love you. We're always happy to see you. And I must say that we owe you so much gratitude for all you've done over the years for this peace and space movement. You've just been remarkable. Books, videos, articles, just so many things you've done. Thank you. Our next speaker, from Sweden, Agneta Norberg. I've just been in email contact with her. She's having an impossible time getting online here. So she's not going to be able to do it. We have a photo that she wanted put up while she was speaking. So Ken is going to post that up now, and I'm going to say a few words in her place about Sweden. I won't nearly do as good a job for sure. Some years ago, Agneta invited us to come to Sweden for our annual Global Network Conference. Before COVID, we used to go to a different country every year and to a different place where the US was involved in space activities, where it had bases and other installations. So we went to Kiruna. If you look at this picture, number one on the list is Kiruna, up in the very high north, as they call it, where the reindeer are and the indigenous people live. And there is a big space downlink center and aerospace testing area where the U.S. has been testing drones for many years. But at this, at,
86. I'm sorry not to be here when you called.
that's Rosie. You need to mute, please, Rosie. Anyway, at this place in Kiruna, they are basically intercepting all phone and fax and email communications from Russia and then turning them over to the United States. But since Sweden and Finland recently joined NATO, the United States got the open door to, I would essentially say, fully colonize the country of Sweden. And you see now all the bases that the United States either has access to or will be building inside of Sweden to be used in this aggressive, ever expanding onslaught against Russia. And it's really frightening. So actually, Agneta, because she has been honest in her work about the US plan for Russia in a country where Russia is constantly demonized, in Sweden I'm talking about, Agneta was kicked out of a couple peace groups that she had helped found, she'd been member of for years and years and years, because the Russophobia is so bad inside of Sweden now that they kicked her out because apparently a leading mainstream newspaper did a real trash job on Agneta when she said that Russia had good reason to move into Ukraine in February of 2022 because more than 14,000 Russian ethnics in the Donbass region, right along the eastern border of Russia there, or the eastern Ukraine border with Russia, and 34,000 had been seriously injured. This war had been going on since the U.S. orchestrated coup d'etat in 2014 in Kiev. So anyway, she's a remarkable person, and we really love her and appreciate her very much. She tells a story that I'd like to repeat about a former U.S. ambassador to Sweden a couple administrations ago during the Obama administration. Obama appointed the son of former Jimmy Carter National Security Advisor by the name of Zbigniew Brzezinski. His son was appointed as ambassador to Sweden. And one of his jobs apparently was to prepare to bring Sweden into NATO. And he obviously succeeded in that process. And what they did was he worked the media. He really pushed the demonization of Russia thoroughly throughout the country. He helped weed out people that might be in some way open or sympathetic to a positive relationship with Russia and got them moved out of the government and brought in the real hardliner types. And now they really dominate the Swedish nation. She told us that, like in Finland, there was no referendum in Sweden giving the public a chance to comment on whether they wanted to join NATO or not. There was no in spite of the polls that were showing that people didn't really want to join NATO, there was just no chance for the public to have any input into this decision. So essentially, US installed politicians, as they've been doing throughout Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe now, or in countries that have near borders or actual borders with Russia. The US has been placing these people into the governments, and they really run the show now. So it's a really very difficult situation, and our friends in Finland and Sweden really fear that there's going to be a war with Russia that will have obviously direct impact on their nation as well. So we're sorry that Agneta couldn't get online here and be with us today. Next up, I want to introduce our dear friend Sung-Hee Che from Jeju Island in South Korea. I must say that it was Sung-Hee that led the global network to know about Jeju Island and the construction of a Navy base there. And as it turned out, I got a letter from her one day, or an email from her saying that there was going to be a protest in Jeju Island. This was many years ago, and she described the situation that the US was going to be deploying its warships built at Bath Iron Works here in Maine, just a few miles from where I live. And these things would be going into this new Navy base that was going to be constructed there on Jeju Island. So it was Sung-Hee that got us involved in that issue and ended up having us invited for one of our annual meetings to Jeju Island, where quite a number of our Global Network board members were arrested for going on to sacred Gurumbi Rock, when it was closed off to the public, to the people, as it was going to be dynamited and covered with cement for the piers for these warships docking there. So we welcome you, Sung-Hee, and thank you for all that you do for the Global Network, with the Global Network, and for the people and the nature on Jeju Island. Welcome.
Thank you, Bruce, for kind introduction. Please let me share the PPT. Thank you. Okay, so can you see my screen? Okay. Hello, this is Sung-Hee Choi. Thank you, Bruce, Dave, and Global Network for organizing the webinar. I would like to present my presentation under the title, The Role of Space Industry in South Korea, The View from Jeju. Why South Korea? First, let me tell you why we should pay attention to South Korea. It is the first Asian country with which the United States made a framework agreement on space, while it is the first country to commercialize the 5G. And it is the first nation where the US Space Force was created outside the United States, named the US Space Forces. South Korea's geopolitical position should be taken into account in this background. As you can see from the map, it is easy to see that the whole South Korea has a high possibility to be a US outpost to China. It is important to pay attention to the UN command located in Pyeongtaek, where the largest US overseas base stations. The UN command created by the US military during the Korean War was supposed to be dismantled with the end of the Korean War. However, the United States has never dismantled the UNC. The UNC has its rear command and 7 bases in Japan. The revitalization of the UNC means Asian version, NATO. Upon the 70th year of the ROK-US Mutual Defense Treaty, there were landmark meetings in November. One was the first meeting in history between South Korea's defense minister and 17 member nations of the UN command. Another was the South Korea-US Space Forum, which was held for the first time in history in November 2003. South Korea's foreign minister stressed that the ROK-US alliance as the global alliance spans the Indo-Pacific and beyond to space. The Korea-US Space Industry Symposium was held soon after the US ROK Space Forum. According to a South Korean minister, the symposium was a significant opportunity for the solidification of the Korea-US alliance in the space industry. South Korean media described South Korean space companies as key players of the South Korea-US space alliance. Even a South Korean company will be in charge of analyzing the data on space objects provided by the United States Air Force. The forum and symposium were after the Korean-US-Japan Trilateral Summit meeting in August 2003, which declared the de facto alliance between the three nations. From June 27th to 29th this year, there was the first three nations multi-domain World, which was held in waters south of Jeju Island, which included cyberspace and space, in addition to the existing land, sea, and air domains. Warships departed from the Jeju Naval Base to join the World.
Hello.
Okay, I already skipped up, sorry. Okay, so, okay. South Korea, which began its space development in 1990, succeeded to launch more than 1-ton practical satellite into the low Earth orbit with its own projectile Ruri in May 2003, becoming the world's seventh largest space power. The era of new space is the cooperation between the private, government, and the military sectors. In 2021, Deputy Chief of Space Operations, United States Forces Space Force, looked forward to continued cooperation in developing the Ruri and the Korean military communication satellites. The Korean Defense Agency anticipated that the Space Defense Development Team would play an active role in boosting the space industry. In March 2024, it was reported that South Korea's military seeks to acquire around 60 small and micro-sized spy satellites by 2030. Another trigger that facilitated the new space was the US liftoff missile guideline for South Korea in 2021. The conditions for military space development were created. The May 21 US ROK Summit also resulted in South Korea's participation in the Artemis program, for which China was excluded. Russia said that the program was like the space version of NATO. On the night of November 21st, 2023, the first North Korean spy satellite was launched. And 10 days later, South Korea launched its first military reconnaissance satellite from the US company SpaceX, its Falcon 9. The satellite was part of South Korea's preemptive strike system. The space the satellite race intensified the military tension, and one of the causes of nullification of inter-Korean military agreement by which the two Koreas had agreed the phase disarmament. And on December 4th, 2023, HANA system, the all-weather Earth observation satellite, was launched from the sea launch platform off the south of Jeju. Right after the rocket launch, HANA system, the arms company CEO said, HANA system will build an outpost for the space industry on Jeju Island. HANA system, the arms corporation, is involved in both satellites of December 1st and December 4th. HANA system aimed to secure military networks using low orbit civilian satellites and a radar foundation for a super connected and multi-layered network for the future military's simultaneous integrated operation. The War Alliance is making allied industries transition to war industries. In this year's NATO summit, 4 NATO partner nations, including South Korea, which is the 5th largest military power in the world, was sought to enhance defense industrial cooperation with NATO. In Jeju, following the Jeju Naval Base, radars for satellite rings were built and rocket launches have been tested, while the project for an airbase disguised as an airport and a space center planned to be built by a big arms company like HANA is driven. The final slide. On March 3rd, 2024, the triangular system of space industry in South Korea was created. Each region was planned to be specialized, respectively, for satellite production, projectile production, and research and development for space industry. The whole nation is going to war economic system with the emergence of space industry. Jeju Island government, hand in hand with HANA, is also working for the space industry cluster. This February, we invited Bruce Gagnon for the national speech trip for the talk of space industry and space militarization. Many were inspired, and as a follow-up, we'll have a national meeting to deepen our concern with the space peace issue this October. While South Korea is being integrated into global war alliance and war industry system, I and we are here to fight against it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sung-hee. I want to say that last March, end of February, beginning of March, Sung-hee and a team of people from around South Korea organized a speaking tour for me in 8 cities over 10 days. It was really amazing trip. So, to come and talk about this whole space issue, to bring it deeper into the consciousness of the peace movement there. So we're really grateful to you, Sung-hee, for that. Agneta Norberg has joined us. Agneta, we have one more speaker, and then we're going to go to the Q&A, and we'll let you talk first for a few minutes. So next up is our board member, Sandeepa Bhatt from India. Sandeepa is professor of law and director of the Center for Aviation and Space Laws at the National University of Juridical Sciences in Kolkata. He also has a distinction of being a member of the Indian Space Research Organization's expert advisory group for drafting the National Space Act for India. So a very young but very accomplished man. We welcome you today, Sandeepa. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I hope I'm audible and also my PPT is visible there. Am I audible? Can someone confirm? And also my PPT, whether it is visible? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, but
Bruce, am I audible?
we don't, we hear you. Oh, there. Okay. We see your PowerPoint now and we do hear you. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Hello, everyone. Let me request you to lend your ears for the next 10 minutes because there is something which is dangerously developing in this particular part of the world. So a kind of a 180-degree turn in the India with respect to the space security. So which I was going through keenly in the last almost 2.5 months. So I would like to actually put forward that kind of a proposition which is developing in India, especially in terms of the space security. Some of us have started arguing that the distinction between the safety and security is blurring. I'm not sure whether that is accepted because historically, if you traditional of safety and security, a clear distinction has to be made. Safety threats are something which are actually not out of the human activities, maybe actually something inherent in the nature. But whereas the security threats are more oriented towards actually our own actions or our own activities in the space. I would like to actually continue with this discussion primarily because of the reason that addressing the safety threat and the security threat should be from two different points of view. While safety threat has to be addressed from a capacity-based approach, you need to develop the technology for the purpose of addressing the safety-based safety threats. But on a other point of from another point of view, the security threats to be addressed from the behavioral perspective. It's a behavior-based approach which is important for the purpose of the security threat. So that's why I would like to continue with this distinction. However, I would like to say that when I'm telling about the security threat, I would be covering both the intentional act as the reckless act. Because we know that in almost all jurisdictions, intentional act and reckless act are kept at an equal pedestal. And consequently, both of them do come within the ambit of the security. In terms of the space law, I should start with the caveat because space treaties are very weak in both aspects. Whether it is intentional, the security or resulting in the threat. So, in terms of intentional acts, we have Article 4 of the treaty, which speaks about peaceful uses, but without defining it. We don't have a definition of what exactly is the peaceful uses. Similarly, if we look into Article 4, it also misses out actually outer space in the second paragraph. It's about moon and other celestial bodies to be exclusively for the peaceful purpose. It misses out space in it. And even in terms of de-weaponization also, it mentions only nuclear weapons and any other kind of weapons of mass destruction. Conventional weapons are not basically mentioned. That's why it is weak in terms of reckless act. On the other hand, even in reckless act also, outer space treaty is quite weak because it mentions Article 9 with respect to the prevention of harmful contamination of outer space. And in many instances, critics have pointed out that it is not wide enough. It's a very, very limited approach. And even the debris creation might not come within the ambit of that. So that's a kind of a approach which has been taken in terms of interpretation. So we have a weakness inherently existing in the international treaties with respect to the dealing with the security threats. Now, coming to the Indian position, what is more important for me is the Indian position. India has been a crusader of the global security. Of course, not just in space. I mean, I'm generally telling about actually the global security because we, as a nation, he's the advocate of a lasting peace. Everyone must have read his literature. And that is the reason why he has used ahimsa, that is the non-violence, as the kind of a weapon against the British administration, even in its struggle for the freedom. And the same principle has been carried forward by our first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who also advocated for what is called as Panchashil, that is the 5 cordial principles of peaceful coexistence. Of course, it came in terms of India-China relationship, but subsequently it has also gained momentum in the international level. Even at the UN bodies, it has been recognized. So that principle of peaceful coexistence has been advocated strongly by India since 1954 onwards. 1961, even non-aligned movement, when the Cold War was actually at its height, non-aligned movement has helped a lot in terms of actually reducing down the tension between US and USSR. Had that been actually most of these countries who are part of the non-aligned movement becoming part of either US group or the USSR group, there would have been more tensions and resulting in actually the higher level of catastrophe during the Cold War period. So India played a pivotal role, even in terms of actually pacifying actually the differences between US and USSR during the Cold War. And interestingly, even I didn't know this actually, despite the fact that I also work in nuclear law, I found during my research that India was the first state to advocate for the complete ban on the nuclear tests. In 1950s, it was the first state to advocate for that actually. So even though we couldn't go for a comprehensive test ban treaty, we still have got a partial test ban treaty coming out of actually the developments in the 1950s and 1960s. So India has always been the crusader in terms of security. With respect to the space security, India had made tremendous contributions in the UN deliberations, 1960s and 1970s. If you look into the 20th and 21st session of the UN General Assembly, India was the one which basically said that peaceful uses should be interpreted as non-military. It is not non-aggressive. Many countries argued that it is just non-aggressive, but India was the one which said that no, there is no military activity to be carried on, and it should be almost similar to that of what we have agreed in the Antarctic regime. And it also mentioned a flaw in the second paragraph of Article 4, which I just mentioned before. It said outer space is missing in the second paragraph of Article 4 of the Outer Space Treaty. So, and that's the reason why it insisted for incorporation of the outer space with respect to the peaceful uses. But unfortunately, that did not happen. We still have a text that says that moon and other celestial bodies need to be exclusively used for these purposes. But the military activities, and if Article 4 is not prohibiting military activities in the Earth orbit, it's a kind of a disaster. Then in UN Corpus, Committee on Peaceful Uses of the Outer Space, United Nations Committee on Peaceful Uses of the Outer Space, India had several deliberations, and I want to point out 3 major things. One, that there was an effort by some of the countries to exclude the nuclear liability, right? Suppose if the nuclear materials are used in outer space, if any disaster happens out of that, they wanted to exclude from the purview of the liability in the Liability Convention. But India was the one who stand against that, saying that nuclear liability cannot be excluded from the Liability Convention. So Indian effort was instrumental in terms of negating such kind of the exclusion of the nuclear liability. Similarly, security concerns emanating from the remote sensing, as well as the broadcasting, direct television broadcasting, these things were highlighted by India in various UN Corpus meetings. And it was the first to highlight those the problems. If you look into the developing countries, actually the approach in terms of the remote sensing as well as the broadcasting, India was the first country to highlight those the problems from the security perspective. Even India was an activist supporter of the PAROS, Prevention of Arms Race in the Outer Space. The 1980s, when it started, India was an active supporter, and it was also vocal against the Strategic Defense Initiative, the so-called Star Wars program. The Six Nation Initiative of 1986, where it actually joined hands with Argentina, Mexico, and some of the other smaller states and all. It was primarily in terms of the prohibiting the anti-satellite weapons, as well as actually the Strategic Defense Initiative. Both of them, both ASAT testing as well as the SDI, have been actually voted against by India and the other 5 countries in the Six Nation Initiative of 1986. In 1999, Unispace 3, the 3rd major conference in terms of the space activities, was headed by India. It was the Professor U.R. Rao, the then chairperson of the ISRO. He headed it. And this has also resulted in the Vienna Declaration on the Space and Human Development, which focused in terms of using outer space for human development rather than military. So a kind of an approach was made in terms of actually the shifting from military use of the outer space to the human development from the space activities. So that's how, if you look into the developments throughout the 20th century, India has been a strong advocate of the peaceful users, and it also meant peaceful is not developments in the 21st century have completely changed the Indian dimensions. Two things which I should point out is the Chinese anti-satellite weapon test of 2007 and the Mumbai terror attacks of 2008. A kind of actually the threat which the two neighboring states, China as well as Pakistan, has imposed on India has resulted in a kind of a change in the Indian policy. You can find that the military reconnaissance started to emerge. 2009, India launched the RISAT-2. Of course, I don't know why there is a difference in the sequence, because they launched the RISAT-2 in 2009 and one in 2012. So the sequence is, the reverse. Whatever. So they are the military reconnaissance satellites which India has launched, and they have been used extensively in 2016 and 2019 with respect to the surgical strike and also Balakot airstrike.
Sandeepa, you've frozen. You've frozen, and you've also run out of time. I don't know if you can even hear me, but you have frozen. We can't hear anything from you now. Can you hear me at all, Sandeepa? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask Sandeepa to provide us with the written summary of his talk. And when we send out the link to this video, I'll include his comments. We're now going to go to the question and answer period. We have about 20 minutes.
What about me?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that right now. Hold on. Hold on. We have about 20 minutes left, and Agneta has finally gotten through. So we're going to go to Agneta for a few minutes. It won't be for the full 10 minutes, Agneta, because
Oh, no, I will be very rapid. I will be rapid. I promise you.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say is that Sweden has changed totally. And after a few minutes, I want Bruce to hold up the map of the US bases. But I introduce and talk about first about Sweden as rumors in the world of peaceful, neutral, fine little country, innocent and not. The contrary is at place. We have been secretly working with the United States of America since the Second World War ended. I won't go so low. But now we have really been exposed to a coup d'etat, I would say. First, of course, that we joined NATO. Why? Because Ukraine, it was a war in Ukraine, and we all know that the United States of America made a coup d'etat in Ukraine, and they had to do something. And that later on, well, so now we have it as an excuse that Sweden has to join NATO. But now we have also been exposed to something we were really not expecting, that additionally, we got a Minister of Foreign Affairs who made a coup d'etat. I would say that it was a coup d'etat. Paul Johnson, who has earlier worked for what is it now? The English MI6, secret like CIA. He had been, and now he is our Minister of defense, can you imagine? So the Swedish parliament has approved Defense Cooperation Agreement, DCA, which gives the United States the possibility to establish military bases at 17 places in the entire Sweden. And I have asked Bruce Gagnon to show this map. I hope you have the map. So I will continue to speak. Look here, from the north to the south, US troops will be allowed without any hindrance to use the entire Swedish territory. Do we want this to happen? No. 84% of the Swedish population is against this decision. That a foreign power will be allowed to deploy soldiers and military materials on Swedish military bases without Swedish possibility to scrutinize. What worries us is that 74% of the population don't have a clue about this decision. Swedish Peace Council, where I was earlier chair, has taken initiative to conduct a poll which gives this depressing answer. In spite of this, the Swedish parliament gave a green light to this frightening decision. DCA is not for cooperation. This agreement is for the US to use Swedish territory for their plans for war on Russia. So I will jump almost the entire, but I will say that the media has played a decisive role and been reporting one-sided and scapegoating Russia. The Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. I have heard this since I was a child, and they haven't come. Consequently, will they attack Sweden because they went into Ukraine? What do you say? They have gone in Russia, went into Ukraine, now come to Sweden. I mean, it's stupidity. Consequently, they will attack Sweden without any reasons. Little or nothing has been reported from 2014 about US involvement in the overthrowing of the democratically elected President Viktor Yanukovych, you know that, and installed a semi-fascist government. But actually, Swedish military has been actively working towards this decision a long time. We know a global network has been in Kiruna. It was a successful meeting already in 2013. So we'll see. So the last 10 years, I jump a bit. The last 10 years have witnessed an increasingly militarization of the high north and the Baltic region. The north means Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The Eastern Sea, earlier named the Sea of Peace, has become a NATO sea. The northern area by the years developed to a training field for all NATO countries, and numerous exercises has been conducted. So I think I stop there because I don't want to use more time, but you can read this, how terrifying it is. And of course, we are making resistance, but they have sort of put me aside because they think I am the beast. Oh, certainly I am. So they have excluded me from all kinds of organizations. Can you imagine that? The organization I was the one founding, Women for Peace. One from the government came and said, you have to get rid of Agneta Norberg, otherwise we won't give you any money. And they went to all kinds of organizations. So today we don't have almost any peace organization supported by, because we were always supported. We were a peace country, but forget it. So to end up here is that there is resistance, of course. We have meetings, we have marches, we are cooperating in the north. And I thank you for letting me be here. And it will be interesting to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Agneta. We love you, and sorry that we had this technical glitch today that you couldn't get in. But anyway, between you and me, I think we covered Sweden pretty good. So our friend Regis Tremley has got his hand up. We're going to hear from him for a short comment. And let me just say about Regis, he is an original Mainer, and he's worked with the Global Network for many years, and he's a very close friend of mine, and he now lives in Yalta in Crimea, which I'm sure he'll say something about. Go ahead, Regis.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and I want to thank each and every one of you for the work that you have been doing around the country and around the world to inform people and educate people about what is happening in our world today that is threatening our existence as humans on this planet. My life changed when I went to Jeju Island in 2011 and I made my film, The Ghost of Jeju. That experience eventually led me to Russia. I came to Russia in 2016, 2018, 2019, and decided to relocate to Yalta in 2020, where I have lived since March of 2020, going on a little more than 4 years. There are a lot of important issues, including the weaponization of space, that are threatening our existence as humans on this planet. I would like to share with you my perspective from here in Russia. First of all, Russians are focused on the all-out US, EU, NATO goal of a strategic defeat of Russia. To the Russian people, they understand what this means. It's an attack on their very existence. But I want to assure you that Russians are not living in fear. Russians are living confidently, as they have for centuries, when they have been invaded by other countries that sought to destroy them, to take their land and to take their resources. Today, Russia, in the person of their president, Vladimir Putin, is doing everything he can to counteract all of the aggressive acts of the United States and NATO and the EU against Russia. He has proclaimed, "You will never defeat us." But President Putin and others have been focused on the larger geopolitical landscape. They talk about a multipolar world that has already emerged. We're already living in it, but it is not yet fulfilled. This effort, the BRICS Plus movement, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is being led by Vladimir Putin. They have a vision of a new world order based on the sovereignty of all nations.
Regis, can you wrap it up?
Yes, I can. I would like to say that Russia has always insisted on no weapons in space. They have always insisted on a treaty to ban all weapons in space. And together, we must all join together, no matter which groups we represent, to counter this effort that will destroy life on this planet. I leave you with this question. When I look at all the threats to life on this planet, all the threats to dehumanize us, are we really an evolutionary aberration designed in an evolutionary sense not to survive? We must fight for our humanity.
Thank you, Regis. Sorry, we have to cut you off, but we're getting short on time. Alice Slater is next. And
Well, I
then,
want to thank all the speakers. They were wonderful. And Regis, you really gave an introduction to what I wanted to say, because I'm on the board of World Beyond War, and we were having a discussion about how can we talk about nuclear abolition. And I think we cannot talk about nuclear abolition in a vacuum. We have to let people know that there have been offers on the table from China, from Russia, to negotiate a treaty to ban weapons of space, to negotiate a cyber ban treaty, to get the structure that makes them hang on to their nuclear weapons until, you know, we give up our mission to dominate and control the military use of space, and that's not integrated. So I don't know exactly how we're supposed to do this, but I want to think about some kind of brainstorming. Like, when we're talking about nuclear abolition, we should be talking how space affects the lack of it, because we've turned down the Paros Treaty and the draft treaty that China and Russia tabled and also when you're talking about space, talk about how that's what's holding up nuclear disarmament. In other words, let's get it into our speaking so people get the gestalt. I feel like we're in silos. The nuclear abolition movement, it keeps going back to arms control, you know, no first use, as if that's going to make a difference. You know, nobody's talking about abolition. And even if you talk about abolition, you got to have people understand that you're not going to abolish anything until you integrate it with space. So I don't know if I make any sense, but food for thought, everybody.
thank you, Alice. You make a lot of sense. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Dave Webb, who's going to make an introduction real quick. Unmute.
I just want to show this. This is a picture of Chris Cole, who's the founder of Drone Wars UK and also of Spacewatch, one of the founders of Spacewatch, which I mentioned in my talk. And he's now on our board of advisors. So I just wanted to say a few words about him. He's the author of a number of reports and articles on the use of armed drones. He's submitted evidence to various parliamentary committees here in the UK, including the Defence Select Committee, the Joint Human Rights Committee, and the Committee on Arms Export Controls, and is regularly invited to speak to conferences, public meetings, and the media on drones, targeted killing, and remote warfare. He's a trustee of the Trust for Research and Education on Arms Trade, and former vice chair of the International Catholic Organization, Pax Christi. He's a fantastic worker and will be a great benefit to the global network, I think. I've put this information on the website so you can see more about him there, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from him a lot in the future. Unfortunately, he couldn't make the meeting today, but yeah, that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. I should say that Chris Cole is going to take the place of one of our beloved advisory board members, Holly Gwynn Graham from Washington State, who recently passed away after a long struggle with cancer. So she was a great singer-songwriter. I first came in contact with her when she wrote a song during our Cassini campaign, when we organized in Florida to stop the launch of the 72 pounds of plutonium from Cape Canaveral, Florida. And she wrote a song, The Poison Arrow, at the time. That's her right there. Thank you, Dave, for posting her picture. And it was a beautiful, beautiful song. So anyway, we're going to miss her a lot, but we welcome Chris in her place. I want to go back to Sandeepa, who's back online. He got disconnected, and so I promised him I'd give him 3 more minutes at the most, and to wrap up. So Sandeepa, when you're ready, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Thank you. Bruce, sorry, it's actually cloudy here, and maybe because of that, I'm having a problem in terms of the connectivity. I'll just wind up in 2 minutes. That's it. I don't need even 3 minutes. Yeah, I have just pointed out already that actually India is a crusader in terms of space security. But unfortunately, of late, there has been a change in the stand. And I was basically pointing out about the different kind of military satellites which have been launched by India, from reconnaissance to naval military and communication between the armed forces. And even the high resolution images and mapping satellites have all been actually launched in the last 8 to 10 years. And added to that, I have a point to make in the next 2 slides. I'll just wind it up with that. March 2019, India has basically gone for the first ASAT testing. Mission Shakti, which is the anti-satellite missile testing, which has been done. History that India has used the space for a direct military the testing. Now, followed by that, you can also see the further reflection in the Indian in terms of the administration as well. 2010, India has actually gone for an integrated space cell in order to counter the Chinese threat. Then in 2019, India has changed this as a defense space agency. There is actually a wing of Air Force, which has been actually made part as the defense space agency. And it is also going to develop as a space command, which is the most recent development. I just heard very recently, since I was actually delivering a talk to them, I heard that actually is going to change as a space command. So it's going to be a big kind of a military unit in India, just like maybe the United States and other states who have come up with the Space Force. Then India has also established the Defense Space Research Organization, DSRO. This is in terms of primarily the space military activities. So research is going on in terms of militarization. In 2019, India has also actually gone for a tabletop war game in SpaceX, wherein the Defense DRDO, Defense Research Organization, has monitored the preparedness of the forces in terms of a space warfare. So there is a 2-day event, which basically has been considered to be something actually big in terms of the military activities. Thankfully, it was just before COVID, and COVID has stopped the development to a greater extent. Last thing, Indian approach has also been reflected in the United Nations. Of late, 2022, if you could recollect, India has abstained from voting in a resolution to prohibit the direct ascent ASAT testing. 2022, most of the countries have agreed for actually the prohibition on the ASAT testing, but India has abstained. And the Indian representative's response is very interesting, which I have mentioned in the slide. He says that India has vital developmental and security interests in the space. I don't know what exactly is this vital developmental issue. I mean, what made India to abstain from voting is really, I'm not very sure about it. And what is more concerning is a development in the last year, December. Air Chief Marshal of India said that Indian Air Force is developing niche space-related technologies with the help of both private players. So it indicates that even the private players are involved in terms of the military activities. And he openly states that over 100 military satellites are going to be launched in the next few years. So this is an open statement available online. Anyone who would like to Google also can Google and find it out. It's a statement coming from the Air Chief Marshal of India, who is the highest officer in the Indian Air Force. So these are the kind of developments which are taking place in India, which is completely distinct from the Indian approach of peace and non-military activities as evident in the 20th century. So that's all. Thank you so much. Sorry for the disturbance in between.
Thank you very much, Sandeepa. I'm glad we got you back in for your conclusion, which I think was really, in a way, the most important part of your whole presentation. So we all
exactly, that's what I made the message to you.
All over the world, we're seeing this growth. We've only given you a small taste today of this mounting and growing, metastasizing cancer of space militarization that the US and many of its allies are now going forward with. And I always like to say that the US can't afford to pay for its whole military space warfare program anymore. It's $35 trillion, that's with a T, in debt today. And so it's going around the world and bringing in its allies into the program. And they call it interoperability, where everybody, as they join this space program, they have to integrate into the US space warfighting system. But the US will be in charge of the tip of the spear. And so even though people come in and they become part of it, the US will be in control of the whole thing. And the allies might not even know how it's used, when it's used, where it's used, because the US will be in charge of it. So I think all of us in our various countries need to really make that point about how the US intends to be in charge of this tip of the spear. I want to say one more thing about India. Earlier, I mentioned when I said that Aruna Camilla, the law professor, couldn't speak today because of a family emergency. And I talked about Rao, J. Narayana Rao, who went to Mauritius on our behalf some years ago to a conference they were holding to bring the space issue to them. And I said he died during COVID. And it was a real loss to us. He really brought the global network to India, and all of the people like Sandeepa and Aruna today, who's a law professor and has organized 2 space law conferences in her country as a result of the early work that Rao did around there. So we all remember Rao fondly for his enormous contribution to bringing the global network into India. I want to quickly say that every year we hold in October Keep Space for Peace Week. This year it's going to be October 5 through 12th. And we ask people around the world to organize some kind of activity to bring this issue to the public consciousness. And even if you do no more than go to our YouTube page, the Global Network YouTube page, where our part-time staff person, Will Griffin, Afghanistan and Iraq war veteran, he makes a video, space video. I'm sure you've all seen them. I send them out on emails every month when he produces them. Go there and during Space Week and send some of those around to your mailing list or put them on your Facebook page or other places like that. Do what you can during Space Week, October 5 through 12. We still haven't made a determination on what the theme will be this year, but we're working on that, and we'll get back to you as soon as we have that. I see a hand up from Bob Anderson. Bob, go ahead and jump in.
I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. You know what? Thanks, Bruce, for organizing this and for everyone out there on the global network. I just wanted to throw into this Regis and Alice.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Introduce you. Where do you live? You're a board member of the global network for a long time. Talk about a little bit of background. What group you're with?
I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico with Stop the War Machine, and our city here and state here is a very heavily militarized state, much like Sweden is, and the scenes there. There's a lot of space research and development goes on here at They're especially working on directed energy weapons. That 1997-2020 vision of space has a picture of a nuclear-powered direct energy beam weapon from space firing on Baghdad, if you look at it real closely. And that's the dream of what they're trying to develop here at this Weapons Research Center here in Albuquerque, which we've been working with. And I just wanted to throw into this discussion, yesterday, the crowdsource failure of software affected so many people around the world, apparently. And I think I was trying to draw some lessons from that in terms of what we're trying to do and talking about space, because all that went down and it was because of the abilities of space communications and control that there was such a widespread effect. And I think that there might be some lessons in that if we can figure out to draw from it, because on the other side, it was almost like a first strike blackout kind of effect that might happen in terms of a nuclear war or some kind of an attack. What could happen to people? We would all be blinded. And, underneath that, there could be some kind of, what Regis was talking about, nuclear conflict started. And so I just think that we should think about that a little bit and see what we can draw from that about the weaponization of space and what it means. It's sort of a parallel. They said it was a software glitch, but it was also transmitted through satellites that came down everywhere and had its effect upon all of us in a lot of different ways. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there because I think it sort of has something to do with what we're trying to do here. Like Alice is saying, we got to sort of like play with some of these ideas and try and figure out what's going on. So I just wanted to throw that out there to everybody because we're sort of in the belly of the beast here in the United States trying to fight this thing. But we're all also now, because of space communications, we're all globally connected. We're all in the belly of the beast of this war machine that we're trying to stop and change these policies and trying to figure out how to get some consciousness to the public about what's going on here. So I'll just leave it at that and just wanted to kick that around a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. You know, we publish Space Alert, our actual newspaper, fairly regularly. And a lot of the information I get from Bob Anderson. He's always sending me articles and various things. And I want to publicly thank him and recognize that he's a great researcher and a great resource for information. So it's just after 12. We advertised a 2-hour meeting, but I just want to see if anybody else out there wants to say anything before we go.
I would like to say something. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's extremely important to get some short video or something in the October Space Week. I have had big difficulties to bring in the space issue into the No to NATO and all other peace organizations. It's sort of a mystic. Well, we had a successful one in 2013 when Dave Webb and Bruce Gagnon and a lot of people were there. We had a successful. Media didn't want to cover it, of course. So media is one obstacle always, but we know it so well. But what I wanted to say is that it is very important to have a short video about this and how it can be linked to the NATO, because they say no, we don't work with, we work with NATO, and I have difficulties in explaining how these things are together. So if you send a video on the October, I will be able to spread, because I almost, no, not given up, but close to make an official meeting about space, because people don't understand what is it about. We don't understand. So thank you for helping me, and also to understand the North, how important it has become. We know, I can see some Norwegian women here, how the North in northern Norway is crucial to the war machine with all these raiders and all other. And one thing I forgot, Israel had the possibility to train their drones up in Sweden before they went into Gaza former time. I'm not sure if they are there, but Sweden is used, and Sweden and Israel has a close cooperation on a lot of things among this. So I think we should scrutinize to see how space is used in the war on Gaza, this horrifying war. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, Will made 2 videos about the role of U.S. Helping Israel use satellite technology for targeting in Gaza. I want to put somebody on the spot. I noticed just a few minutes ago, my son, Julian Gagnon, who lives in Cambodia. He's a debate coach and teacher. He's joined this. I wonder if I can get him to come on just to see his face, say hello to everybody. And
everyone.
Is your face available?
Yeah, I'm here. I got my camera on, everything. I'm currently coming to you from actually Beijing. So I'm here not quite representing China, but definitely thinking about what you're saying and the intersections between US militarization, Indian militarization of space, and Chinese as well. So Dad, you have to unmute yourself. Nobody can hear you.
Thank you. Your whole life, you were born in 1980, and I started working on space in 1982. So you've been around this issue your whole life. Can you make just some other general comment about, I don't know what you might say, but say something about that.
Well, what I will say is that when I started working with the debate organization that I'm currently at in China, the first topic that they debated across the country was about the privatization of space. And it was kind of interesting to see kids in China discussing public versus private funding of space. Unfortunately, I thought that the debates didn't really get very, I don't know, political, and there were very few people who kind of looked at the role of military applications of space, and I thought that that was a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, I think maybe it's not entirely surprising because anything political is very sensitive here. And I think that kind of says something about the broader public and Chinese attitude as well, that when it comes to space issues, they're very focused on like scientific questions, economic questions, as opposed to potential military applications.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. It's wonderful to see you. Tell us just a little bit about what you're doing in China right now. There's some debate tournaments or something?
We're currently hosting summer debate camps for students. We have one that's this week in Beijing and next week in Shanghai. The students are learning about the topic of whether Brazil should prioritize protecting the environment or developing their economy.
All right. Well, thank you, Julian. Love you, and let's talk soon. Okay, anybody else before we go? Anybody else want to say anything? Well, let me just thank everybody for joining us today, and we again will send out this the link to this webinar. And Sandeepa, if you have any kind of written thing that I could add to that, I would be happy to do so.
Sure.
And good
We
luck.
want to thank you, Bruce, for all these years of service and for helping us understand. Thank you.
Well, I feel lucky that I stumbled onto this issue, and I'll stay at it as long as I can. Thank you, everybody, and take good care. Bye-bye.
We love you.
I love all of you.
Thank you.